The rain pounded against my apartment windows like tiny fists demanding entry. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass, watching droplets race down in chaotic patterns while my 3-year-old daughter Emma slept in the next room. My reflection stared back at me, hollow cheeks, dark circles under my eyes, and the permanent worry line etched between my brows that had appeared the day Emma's father disappeared with our savings. "Just one more bill," I whispered, sliding my finger across my cracked phone screen to check my bank balance. The red numbers glared back, mocking me. -237.43. My chest tightened as I calculated how many extra shifts I'd need at the diner to cover rent, daycare, and the electricity bill that was already 2 weeks overdue. Tonight had been particularly brutal. My feet ached from the double shift, and the smell of grease clung to my hair despite the scalding shower I'd taken. The memory of my manager's wandering hands made my skin crawl, but I couldn't afford to quit. Not yet. Not until I found something better. I pushed away from the window and moved quietly through our small apartment, checking on Emma, her chestnut curls, so like mine, splayed across her pillow, one arm wrapped tightly around the tattered teddy bear that was her most prized possession. My heart swelled with love and fear in equal measure. She deserved so much more than this precarious life I was providing. "I promise it'll get better, baby," I whispered, though she couldn't hear me. I gently tucked her blanket around her shoulders before retreating to the kitchen. Our refrigerator hummed loudly in the silence, the sound emphasizing how empty it was inside. Half a carton of milk, some wilted vegetables, and leftover pasta that would be tomorrow's dinner. I closed it with a sigh and leaned against the counter, my shoulders slumping with exhaustion. Tomorrow would be another grueling day. Drop Emma at Mrs. Chen's daycare at 6 a.m., work the morning shift at the diner, pick up Emma, feed her, then head to my evening job cleaning offices until midnight. The endless cycle of barely surviving was wearing me down to nothing. I was stirring a cup of tepid tea when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Your payment is late again, Olivia. 3rd time this year. We need to talk tomorrow. 10 a.m. Constellation Coffee on 5th. Don't be late." My hand trembled as I read the message. Mr. Lawrence, my landlord. I'd been avoiding his calls, hoping for just a few more days until payday. My throat constricted with panic. An eviction notice would destroy the fragile stability I'd managed to create for Emma. Sleep eluded me that night, my mind racing with impossible solutions. By morning, I looked worse than ever, my skin pale and my eyes bloodshot. After dropping Emma off with a tight hug and a promise to pick her up on time, I headed toward the coffee shop, rehearsing excuses and pleas in my mind. Constellation Coffee sat wedged between a high-end boutique and an art gallery in a part of town I rarely visited. The sleek exterior with its black awning and gold lettering felt intimidating, worlds away from my usual haunts. Inside, the aroma of expensive coffee and pastries made my stomach growl painfully, reminding me that I'd skipped breakfast to save food for Emma. I scanned the room for Mr. Lawrence's balding head and round glasses, but didn't see him. Instead, the cafe was occupied by well-dressed professionals typing on laptops and couples engaged in hushed conversations. I checked my phone. 9:55 a.m. I'd arrived early, desperate not to give him any additional reason to evict us. Taking a seat at a small table near the window, I ordered the cheapest item on the menu, a plain black coffee, and waited, my knee bouncing nervously beneath the table. The minutes ticked by slowly. 10 a.m., 10:15 a.m., 10:30 a.m. Mr. Lawrence was never late. Had I misunderstood the meeting place? I was about to check my phone again when the atmosphere in the cafe suddenly shifted. The quiet murmur of conversations faltered, and I felt a wave of tension ripple through the room. The door had opened, but it wasn't my landlord who entered. It was him. Later, I would try to recall the details of that first moment, how the light seemed to bend around his tall figure, how the air charged with electricity, how my heart stumbled in my chest. But in that instant, I only registered impressions, the precise cut of his charcoal suit, the gleam of his Italian leather shoes against the polished concrete floor. The way his presence seemed to consume all the oxygen in the room. He wasn't alone. 2 men flanked him, one with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, the other with shoulders so broad they strained against his black suit. Both scanned the cafe with predatory efficiency before taking positions near the door. Bodyguards, my mind supplied belatedly. The man himself moved with unhurried confidence toward the counter. His back was to me, but I could see how the barista's hands trembled slightly as she took his order. He said something that made her laugh nervously, though the sound held no genuine mirth. When he turned, I couldn't help but stare. His face belonged on a Renaissance painting, all sharp angles and perfect symmetry. Dark hair swept back from a high forehead, revealing eyes so intensely blue they seemed to glow against his olive skin, a straight nose above lips that curved into something not quite a smile. He couldn't have been older than 35. I forced myself to look away, suddenly conscious of my worn jeans and faded sweater, the dark circles under my eyes, and my hair hastily pulled into a messy bun. I didn't belong in the same room as someone like him. My phone buzzed again, mercifully breaking the spell. A text from Mr. Lawrence. Something came up. Meeting postponed. Will contact to reschedule. Relief flooded through me. A temporary reprieve. I gathered my meager belongings, planning to escape before spending any more money I didn't have, when a shadow fell across my table. Leaving so soon? The voice was deep, accented with something I couldn't place. Italian, perhaps, or Greek, and it froze me mid-motion. I looked up slowly, my breath catching as I met those blue eyes directly. They were even more startling up close, framed by thick, dark lashes. The man from the door stood beside my table, coffee in hand, studying me with unnerving intensity. Yes, I stammered, clutching my bag like a shield. I have to get back to work. His gaze swept over me, taking in details I wished he couldn't see. The frayed cuffs of my sweater, the chip in my nail polish, the exhaustion etched into my face. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to the empty chair across from me. Without waiting for my response, he sat down, placing his untouched coffee on the table. "You seem troubled." My instincts screamed danger, but something in his direct gaze made lying impossible. "I'm fine. Just busy." A slight curl formed at the corner of his mouth. "Olivia Evans, correct?" Ice flooded my veins. "How do you know my name?" He didn't answer immediately, instead, signaling to a server who appeared instantly at his side. "Bring the lady something to eat, the avocado toast and a cappuccino." "I didn't order," I began. "You haven't eaten today," he stated simply. Not a question, but a fact. I prefer to have conversations when both parties are comfortable. My pride warred with hunger and curiosity. "Who are you?" "Alessandro Russo." He offered his hand across the table, and I hesitantly placed my smaller one in his. His grip was warm, firm, and lingered a moment too long. "Your landlord works for me." Understanding dawned with horrifying clarity. Everyone knew the Russo name in this city, whispered in corners, emblazoned occasionally across newspaper headlines, connected to businesses both legitimate and otherwise. He wasn't just wealthy. He was powerful in ways that existed in shadows. "You own my building?" My voice sounded distant to my own ears. "I own many buildings." His eyes never left mine, including the office complex you clean at night, and the diner where you let the manager touch you rather than risk losing your job. Fear slithered up my spine. "Have you been watching me?" The server returned with my food, placing it before me with a deference that spoke volumes. The smell made my stomach clench painfully, but I couldn't bring myself to eat under his scrutiny. "Eat," Alessandro said softly, not a request. I picked up the fork, taking a small bite that tasted like ashes in my mouth. "Why am I here? Is this about the rent? I can pay by Friday, I just need—" "This isn't about money." He leaned forward slightly, his presence enveloping me like a shadow. "This is about Emma." The fork clattered against my plate. "What about my daughter?" Panic surged through me, maternal protectiveness overriding fear. "If you've gone near her, I swear—" "You'll what?" Amusement flickered across his features, there and gone in an instant. "Relax, Olivia. Your daughter is safe at Little Sprouts Daycare with Mrs. Chen, who is currently reading The Very Hungry Caterpillar to the children for the 3rd time this week." My hands began to shake. "What do you want from us?" Alessandro studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "Your husband." "Emma's father was never my husband," I corrected automatically. Something darkened in his eyes. Michael Reeves. He worked for me. The room seemed to tilt sideways. Michael had told me he was an investment banker. That's not possible. He handled certain financial aspects of my business, Alessandro continued, as if I hadn't spoken, until 18 months ago, when he disappeared with a considerable sum of money. My money. Memories flashed through my mind. Michael's increasing nervousness, the late-night phone calls, his insistence that we needed to save every penny. Then, his sudden departure, leaving only a hastily scribbled note claiming he needed space. I'd thought he was running from commitment, from fatherhood. I never imagined he was running from someone like Alessandro Russo. I didn't know, I whispered, my appetite completely gone. I haven't heard from him since he left. Alessandro's eyes narrowed slightly, assessing the truth in my words. Whatever he saw must have satisfied him because he nodded once. I believe you. However, that doesn't change the fact that he took what belongs to me. I don't have your money, I said, desperation creeping into my voice. Everything we had, he took. I've been struggling to keep a roof over our heads. I'm aware of your circumstances. His tone softened almost imperceptibly. 3 jobs, 60 hours a week, and still drowning in debt that isn't yours. Shame burned my cheeks. I hated that he knew how desperate my situation was, that my struggles were laid bare before this immaculately dressed stranger. What do you want from me? Alessandro reached into his suit jacket and withdrew an envelope, placing it on the table between us. This contains the deed to your apartment, now in your name. Your rent has been paid for the next 6 months. There's also an account with sufficient funds for Emma's preschool and any immediate needs. I stared at the envelope, unable to process his words. Why would you do that? Because Michael took something that belongs to me, he said, his voice hardening. And I take care of what's mine. We're not yours, I said, finding a sliver of defiance despite my fear. Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. That's where you're wrong, Olivia. The moment Michael involved you and your daughter in his theft, you became my responsibility. He stood in one fluid motion, buttoning his suit jacket. My driver will take you home. Pack essentials for yourself and Emma. You'll be staying somewhere safer until Michael is found. What? No. I pushed back from the table, nearly toppling my chair. I'm not going anywhere with you. I don't even know you. Alessandro's expression didn't change, but the temperature around us seemed to drop. You misunderstand. This isn't a request. The 2 men who had entered with him materialized beside our table, their presence cutting off any thought of escape. The other patrons studiously avoided looking in our direction, suddenly fascinated by their coffees and phones. Alessandro stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Something expensive and subtle that made my head swim. He reached out, tilting my chin up with one finger until our eyes met. Look at me, Olivia, he said, his voice low and intense. You're not alone anymore. I protect what's mine, and right now, that includes you and Emma. My breath caught in my throat as the full implication of his words sank in. In trying to survive Michael's betrayal, I had somehow fallen under the possession of a man whose mere presence commanded an entire room, a man who could apparently solve my financial problems with a single envelope, but whose help came with invisible chains. As if reading my thoughts, Alessandro's hand moved from my chin to tuck a stray strand of hair behind my ear, the gesture oddly tender despite the steel in his eyes. Your choice is simple, he murmured. Trust me, and let me keep you both safe, or take your chances with whatever Michael has set in motion by stealing from me. Choose wisely, Olivia, for Emma's sake. The mention of my daughter's name snapped something inside me. I stepped back from his touch, clutching the strap of my bag like a lifeline. I need to pick up my daughter, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Alessandro nodded once. Marco will drive you. I'll see you both this evening. It wasn't a question. It wasn't even a statement. It was a certainty, as immutable as gravity. As I followed the broad-shouldered guard named Marco toward the door, I felt Alessandro's eyes on me like a physical touch. I didn't look back, but I knew with bone-deep certainty that my life had just irrevocably changed. What I didn't know then was exactly how deep Michael's betrayal went, or how far Alessandro Russo would go to claim what he considered his. Marco drove in silence, his massive hands gripping the steering wheel of the sleek black SUV. Tinted windows shielded us from the outside world as we navigated through neighborhoods that grew increasingly unfamiliar. I clutched my phone, the weight of Alessandro's envelope heavy in my bag. "Where exactly are we going?" I asked, my voice sounding small in the cavernous vehicle. "To get your daughter," Marco replied, his accent thicker than Alessandro's. Mr. Russo was clear about the schedule. The schedule, as if my life had already been mapped out without my consent. I stared out the window, watching raindrops chase each other across the glass, and tried to make sense of what was happening. Michael had stolen from the Russos, apparently one of the most dangerous families in the city. And now Alessandro was, what? Protecting us? Collecting us? Using us as bait? We pulled up to Little Sprouts daycare 15 minutes before my usual pickup time. The cheerful yellow building with its painted butterflies seemed surreal against the backdrop of my current situation. "I'll wait here," Marco said, shifting the car into park. I hesitated, my hand on the door handle. "I could run," I said, surprising myself with my boldness. "Take Emma and disappear." Marco's dark eyes met mine in the rearview mirror. "You could," he agreed, his tone almost gentle. "But Mr. Russo would find you before nightfall, and he would be disappointed." The way he said the word sent ice down my spine. I nodded once and stepped out into the drizzling rain. Mrs. Chen looked surprised to see me early but asked no questions as I signed Emma out. My daughter's face lit up when she spotted me, her tiny legs carrying her across the room as fast as they could. "Mommy!" she squealed, throwing herself into my arms. I breathed in her scent, baby shampoo and crayons, and that indefinable sweetness that was uniquely Emma. My chest ached with love and fear. "Hey, Ladybug," I whispered, squeezing her tight. "We're going on a little adventure today." Her eyes widened. "With ice cream?" I forced a smile. "Maybe. Let's get your backpack, okay?" Minutes later, we emerged into the gray afternoon. Emma stopped abruptly when she spotted the black SUV, her small hand gripping mine tighter. "Who's that?" she whispered. I knelt down to her level. "That's Marco. He's going to drive us today because..." I fumbled for an explanation a 3-year-old would accept. "Because our car is sick." Emma considered this with the serious expression she reserved for important matters. "Like when I had a fever." "Exactly like that," I said, grateful for her easy acceptance. "The car needs medicine and rest." Marco had stepped out and opened the back door, revealing a booster seat that certainly hadn't been there during our drive from the cafe. He nodded at Emma. "Miss." To my surprise, Emma giggled. "He's big," she stage whispered to me. "Yes, he is," I agreed, helping her into the booster seat and securing the straps. "Almost as big as a bear." "I'm not a bear," Marco said with unexpected solemnity as he closed the door. "Bears are not reliable with schedules." That startled a laugh from me, breaking through the tension for just a moment. As we pulled away from the daycare, I noticed Emma's fascination with the car's interior. The soft leather seats, the buttons controlling the windows, the tablet mounted on the back of the front seat. "Can I watch cartoons?" she asked, pointing to the screen. Before I could respond, the tablet came to life, displaying a children's show I recognized as Emma's favorite. Marco caught my questioning look in the rearview mirror. "Mr. Russo suggested the child might enjoy entertainment during the drive." Alessandro had known which show my daughter preferred. The realization sent another chill through me. How long had he been watching us? What else did he know? While Emma was distracted by the cartoon, I finally opened the envelope Alessandro had given me. Inside was indeed the deed to our apartment with my name listed as owner, rental payments marked as paid in full for the next 6 months, and a bank card with a note indicating the PIN was Emma's birthday. There was also a smaller envelope containing a key and an address I didn't recognize, along with a handwritten note in elegant script. "Until things are settled, you'll both be safer here. A is expecting you." My heart raced as I tucked everything back into the envelope. This was happening too fast. I'd gone from drowning in debt to being effectively owned by a man I'd met only hours ago. "Where are we going now?" I asked Marco, trying to keep my voice low enough that Emma wouldn't hear over her cartoon. To your apartment to collect your things, he replied. Then to the residence Mr. Russo has prepared. And if I refuse? Marco's eyes met mine briefly in the mirror. That would be unwise, Miss Evans. We arrived at my shabby apartment building, which looked even more depressing in contrast to the luxury vehicle now parked outside it. I unbuckled Emma from her seat. We need to pack some things, Ladybug, I explained, for our adventure. Emma's eyes sparkled with excitement. Like a vacation? Something like that, I murmured, helping her out of the car. To my dismay, Marco followed us inside, his imposing figure making our narrow hallway seem even smaller. Mrs. Abernathy from 3B peeked out as we passed, her eyes widening at the sight of the hulking man trailing behind us. I gave her a strained smile, pretending everything was normal. Inside our apartment, I moved on autopilot, pulling out suitcases and filling them with clothes, toiletries, and Emma's favorite toys. Marco stood by the door, his presence a constant reminder of our new reality. How long will we be gone? I asked him as I folded Emma's tiny t-shirts. Mr. Russo will explain everything, he replied, maddeningly vague. I was zipping up the last suitcase when Emma tugged at my sleeve. Mommy, can I bring Teddy? Of course, baby. We wouldn't leave Teddy behind. I watched as she carefully wrapped her beloved bear in a blanket and tucked him into her little backpack. The simple act of childhood innocence against the backdrop of our current situation brought tears to my eyes. Don't cry, Mommy, Emma said, patting my cheek with her small hand. Adventures are fun. I pulled her close, inhaling her sweet scent. You're right, Ladybug. Adventures can be fun, and we're in this together, okay? Together, she agreed solemnly. Marco loaded our suitcases into the trunk while I took one last look around the apartment that had been our sanctuary, however humble. I locked the door behind us, wondering if we would ever return. The drive took us deeper into the affluent part of the city, where trees lined immaculate streets and wrought iron fences protected manicured lawns. Emma pressed her face against the window, eyes wide at the mansions we passed. Are we going to a castle? She asked. I glanced at Marco, who remained expressionless. Not exactly, sweetie. We finally pulled up to a stunning brownstone on a quiet, exclusive street. Unlike the ostentatious mansions we'd passed, this building exuded understated elegance, classic architecture with tasteful modern touches. Two men in suits stood discreetly near the entrance. We're here, Marco announced, pulling into a private driveway that led to a garage beneath the building. My stomach twisted with anxiety as the garage door closed behind us, sealing us in. Marco helped with our luggage while I carried a suddenly shy Emma who buried her face in my neck. This way, Marco directed, leading us to an elevator. He pressed his thumb against a biometric scanner, and the doors silently opened. The elevator ascended smoothly, opening directly into an apartment that took my breath away. Soaring ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, gleaming hardwood floors covered with plush rugs. The space was decorated in shades of cream, gray, and blue, elegant yet surprisingly warm. Hello there. I turned toward the voice, startled to see a woman in her 50s approaching us with a warm smile. Her silver-streaked dark hair was pulled into a neat bun, and she wore a simple black dress with a cardigan. I'm Alessandra, she said, her Italian accent more pronounced than Alessandro's. You must be Olivia and little Emma. I nodded, still clutching Emma, who peered curiously at the woman. Marco, please put their things in the blue bedroom, Alessandra directed. She turned back to us. You must be tired and hungry. I've prepared some food, if you'd like to eat. Are you related to Alessandro? I asked cautiously. Her eyes, the same striking blue as his, crinkled with her smile. I'm his aunt. And temporary housekeeper, though he would never call me that. Some of my tension eased at her motherly demeanor. I set Emma down, who immediately hid behind my legs, but peeked out curiously. Do you have cookies? Emma asked in a small voice. Alessandra laughed, a warm, genuine sound. I made chocolate chip cookies this morning. Would you like one before dinner? Emma nodded eagerly, her shyness forgotten at the mention of cookies. First, let me show you to your room so you can freshen up, Alessandra said, leading us down a hallway. Alessandro called to say he'll be joining us for dinner. The blue bedroom turned out to be a spacious suite with a king-sized bed, an adjoining bathroom with a tub that could fit 3 people, and a smaller room connected by a door that contained a child's bed, shaped like a princess carriage. Emma squealed with delight when she saw it. "Is this my room?" she asked, bouncing on her toes. "It's all yours, little one," Alessandra confirmed. I stood frozen, taking in the opulence around us. The room had been prepared specifically for us. Children's books on the shelves, Emma's favorite stuffed animals arranged on her bed, including duplicates of the ones we'd brought, clothes in her size hanging in the closet. "How long has Alessandro been planning this?" I asked Alessandra when Emma was distracted by exploring her new space. The older woman's expression softened. "He's been aware of your situation for some time." "That doesn't answer my question." She patted my arm gently. "Alessandro will explain everything. For now, rest. Take a bath if you like. There are clothes for you in the dresser and closet." With that, she left us to settle in, promising cookies in the kitchen when we were ready. I sank onto the edge of the bed, my mind whirling. The bathroom called to me with its promise of luxury I hadn't experienced in years, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being caught in a beautiful trap. I checked my phone. No service, despite full bars. Somehow, I wasn't surprised. "Mommy, look!" Emma emerged from her room wearing a princess crown she'd found. "I'm a princess now." I smiled despite myself. "You certainly are, Ladybug." After helping Emma change into clean clothes, which fit her perfectly, I quickly showered and dressed in jeans and a soft cashmere sweater I found in my dresser. Everything was exactly my size, from the underwear to the socks. The invasion of privacy should have infuriated me, but exhaustion dampened my outrage to a dull unease. We followed the smell of baking to the kitchen, where Alessandra was sliding a pan of lasagna into the oven. Emma immediately climbed onto a stool at the island counter, where a small plate of cookies and a glass of milk waited. "Thank you," I said, as Alessandra handed me a mug of coffee. "For being kind to her. Children are precious," she replied simply. "And your Emma is especially delightful." I watched as she interacted with my daughter, answering Emma's endless questions with patient amusement. Despite my suspicions and fear, I found myself relaxing slightly in her grandmotherly presence. "Alessandra," I began carefully. "What does Alessandra want with us?" "Really?" She paused, choosing her words with obvious care. "Alessandro is a complicated man with strong beliefs about family and responsibility. We're not his family," I pointed out. "Perhaps not by blood," she conceded. "But in his mind, Michael's actions brought you under his protection." "Protection feels a lot like captivity at the moment." Alessandra's expression grew serious. "Michael took more than money, Olivia. He took something very dangerous, information that could harm many people, including Alessandro. Until Michael is found, anyone connected to him is at risk." A chill ran through me. "What kind of danger are we in?" "The kind that requires the security measures you've seen," she said quietly, nodding toward the window where I could just make out men patrolling the perimeter of the property. Before I could ask more questions, we heard the elevator doors open. Emma was too engrossed in her cookie to notice, but I tensed immediately. Alessandro walked into the kitchen, his presence immediately filling the space. He'd removed his suit jacket, and his crisp white shirt had the sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. His eyes found mine immediately, something unreadable flickering in their blue depths. "You're here," he said, satisfaction evident in his tone. "Good. Did we have a choice?" I asked, keeping my voice low so Emma wouldn't hear. A slight smile curved his lips. "There are always choices, Olivia. You made the right one." He moved past me to greet his aunt with a kiss on both cheeks, speaking to her rapidly in Italian. Then, to my surprise, he knelt beside Emma's stool, bringing himself to her eye level. "Hello, Emma," he said, his deep voice gentler than I'd heard it before. "Are you enjoying your cookie?" Emma studied him with the frank curiosity of childhood. "It's yummy. Are you the castle king?" Alessandro laughed, the sound rich and genuine. "No, not a king. My name is Alessandro." "That's a big name," Emma declared seriously. "You can call me Alex if that's easier," he offered. Emma nodded, apparently satisfied with this solution. "Alex, do you like cookies too?" "Very much," he replied, accepting one when she solemnly offered from her plate. "Thank you." I watched this interaction with a mixture of confusion and wariness. The dangerous man who had effectively kidnapped us was now chatting amicably with my daughter about cookies and favorite colors. When Emma returned to her milk, Alessandro straightened and turned to me. "We need to talk, Olivia. After dinner." It wasn't a request. I nodded stiffly, hyper-aware of Emma's presence. Dinner was a surreal experience. Alessandra's lasagna was possibly the best thing I'd ever tasted, and the wine Alessandro poured flowed like liquid velvet. Emma chatted happily, seemingly at ease in these luxurious surroundings that should have felt alien to her. Alessandro answered her questions with surprising patience, even laughing at her 3-year-old jokes. I remained mostly silent, watching the domestic scene unfold as if from a distance. This powerful, dangerous man was treating my daughter with genuine kindness. Yet I couldn't forget the implicit threat behind our presence here. After dinner, Alessandra offered to give Emma a bath and read her a bedtime story. My daughter went willingly, already half in love with the kind woman, and excited about her princess bed. Alessandro led me to his study, a masculine space of leather and dark wood, with bookshelves lining the walls and a desk that probably cost more than a year's rent at my old apartment. "Sit," he said, gesturing to one of the leather chairs facing the fireplace where flames crackled softly. He poured 2 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter and handed one to me. "I'm not much of a drinker," I said, accepting it anyway. "Tonight might be an exception," he replied, taking the chair opposite mine. His eyes studied me over the rim of his glass. "You have questions." I set my untouched drink aside. "Dozens. Let's start with why you've brought us here." Alessandro leaned back, the firelight casting shadows across his face. "As I told you, Michael stole from me. Not just money, though that was substantial. He took information. Client lists, security codes, evidence of certain business transactions. Illegal transactions," I clarified. His expression didn't change. "Let's say transactions that certain authorities would find interesting." "And you think I know where Michael is? Or where he hid this information?" "No." Alessandro's directness surprised me. If I thought that, our conversation would be very different. "I believe you were as betrayed by him as I was." "Then why—" "Michael has enemies besides me," he interrupted. "People who would use any leverage available to recover what he took. That includes you and Emma." The implication sent ice through my veins. "You're saying someone might hurt my daughter to get to Michael." "I'm saying I won't allow that possibility to exist," he replied, his voice hardening. "Here, you're both under my protection. No one would dare touch what belongs to me." And there it was again. That possessive language that should have offended me but instead sent a confusing shiver down my spine. "We don't belong to you," I said, needing to establish that boundary. "Your protection doesn't give you ownership." Alessandro's eyes darkened. "In my world, Olivia, the distinction is less clear than you might like." He rose in one fluid motion and moved to stand by the window, gazing out at the city lights. "Michael contacted one of my associates 3 days ago, offering to sell back what he stole for a considerable sum. He's alive." The question escaped before I could stop it, revealing more than I intended. Alessandro turned, his gaze piercing. "You sound relieved." "I've spent 18 months wondering if he was dead in a ditch somewhere," I admitted. "For Emma's sake, I'm glad he's alive, even if he's a thief and a coward." "A thief, a coward, and now a blackmailer," Alessandro corrected. "He's arranged a meeting for the exchange. I intend to be there." Understanding dawned. "And you think he'll be more cooperative if he knows you have us?" Alessandro's expression hardened. "I think your safety is non-negotiable, regardless of what happens with Michael." "What does that mean?" I asked, rising to face him. He closed the distance between us in 2 strides, stopping close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. "It means that after tomorrow, your connection to Michael ends permanently. Your life, yours and Emma's, will be under my protection indefinitely." "And if I refuse?" His hand came up to cup my cheek, the touch surprisingly gentle. "Refusing protection is like refusing to wear a seatbelt while driving through a storm. Technically possible, but remarkably foolish." I should have stepped back, Should have slapped his hand away, but something in his intense gaze held me frozen. What exactly are you offering, Alessandro? His thumb traced my lower lip, sending sparks of unwanted heat through my body. Security. Stability. A future where you never have to work 3 jobs again. Where Emma can have everything she deserves. In exchange for what? My voice was barely a whisper. Your loyalty, he murmured. Your presence in my home. Your trust. That sounds like ownership, I said, finally finding the strength to step back from his touch. Alessandro's eyes followed me. Something dangerous and hungry in their depths. Call it what you will. By this time tomorrow, Olivia Evans, you'll understand exactly what it means to be under my protection. The words held the weight of prophecy, settling around me like chains gilded in gold. I thought of Emma, already asleep in her princess bed, blissfully unaware of the dangerous game being played around her. I want your word that Emma will always be safe, I said, finding my voice. No matter what happens with Michael or with us, you have it, Alessandro replied without hesitation. On my family's name, no harm will ever come to your daughter. In the world he inhabited, I understood that such an oath was binding beyond any legal document. It was something, at least. Get some rest, he said, his tone softening slightly. Tomorrow will change everything. As I left his study, feeling his eyes on me until the door closed behind me, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just negotiated terms of surrender in a war I didn't even know I was fighting. And somewhere in the city, Michael, the man who had once promised to love me forever, was plotting his own survival, unaware that his betrayal had delivered me into the hands of Alessandro Russo, a man whose protection felt as dangerous as any threat. I woke to sunlight filtering through unfamiliar curtains, and the disorienting sensation of sinking into a mattress far more luxurious than my own. For a moment, I couldn't remember where I was. Then yesterday's events crashed over me like a wave. Alessandro. The apartment. The implicit threat beneath his protection. A soft knock on the bedroom door jolted me fully awake. Come in, I called, pulling the silky sheets higher around my body. Alessandra entered with a tray of coffee and pastries. Good morning, Olivia. Did you sleep well? Better than I should have, I admitted. The truth was, I'd expected to lie awake all night, but exhaustion had claimed me almost as soon as my head hit the pillow. Emma is already up and having breakfast with Alessandro in the kitchen, she said, setting the tray on the bedside table. That child is an early riser. I bolted upright. She's with Alessandro? Alone? Alessandra's expression softened. He won't harm her, Olivia. Children are sacred to him. The thought of my daughter chatting away with the dangerous man who had effectively taken us captive sent panic coursing through me. I threw back the covers, grabbing the robe draped across a nearby chair. I need to get to her, I said, cinching the robe around my waist. At least take a moment for coffee, Alessandra suggested, but I was already heading for the door. I followed the sound of Emma's giggles down the hallway to the kitchen, where I froze at the threshold, unsure if I was still dreaming. Alessandro Russo, the man whose very name inspired fear throughout the city, sat at the island counter beside my daughter, both of them hunched over what appeared to be pancakes shaped like animals. He wore a simple black t-shirt that clung to his muscular frame and revealed arms corded with strength. His dark hair was slightly tousled, giving him a more approachable appearance than yesterday's impeccable businessman. See, the ears need to be pointier, Emma was instructing seriously, gesturing to her pancake. Bunnies have very pointy ears. Ah, I see my mistake now, Alessandro replied, his deep voice containing genuine amusement, as he used a knife to reshape his pancake's ears. Is this better? Emma considered his work with the gravity of an art critic. Much better. Now we can put blueberries for the eyes. Neither had noticed me yet, and I took a moment to observe their unexpected camaraderie. Emma showed none of her usual shyness around strangers, chattering away as if she'd known Alessandro her entire life. For his part, he gave her his complete attention, responding to her 3-year-old logic with surprising patience. Good morning, I finally said, stepping into the kitchen. Emma's face lit up. Mommy, Alex made bunny pancakes! Look! Alessandro's eyes met mine, something unreadable flickering in their blue depths. Good morning, Olivia. Coffee? Please, I managed, sliding onto a stool beside Emma. I ran a hand over her curls. Did you sleep well in your princess bed, Ladybug? She nodded enthusiastically. It's magical. And look what Alex gave me. She proudly displayed a small silver bracelet on her tiny wrist, adorned with a single charm. A ladybug crafted from red enamel. My eyes shot to Alessandro, who was pouring coffee into a mug. It's tradition in my family to give children protective charms, he explained, sliding the coffee toward me. The ladybug symbolizes good fortune and protection. It's very pretty, Emma, I said carefully, unsure how to feel about Alessandro giving my daughter jewelry. What do we say when someone gives us a gift? Thank you, Emma recited dutifully to Alessandro, who inclined his head. You're very welcome, Piccola, he replied. The Italian endearment rolled off his tongue naturally, and Emma beamed at the nickname. I sipped my coffee, trying to gather my thoughts. Alessandro moved with easy confidence around the kitchen, a stark contrast to the intimidating figure from yesterday. He set a plate of pancakes in front of me, normal circular ones, not animal-shaped, and leaned against the counter. There's maple syrup, honey, or chocolate sauce, he offered. Emma prefers the chocolate. Chocolate is the best, Emma confirmed solemnly, her chin already smeared with evidence of her choice. I opted for maple syrup, cutting into the perfectly golden pancakes. They were delicious, light and buttery. These are amazing, I admitted between bites. I didn't take you for the cooking type. A hint of a smile touched Alessandro's lips. There are many things you don't know about me, Olivia. The simple statement carried weight beyond the casual breakfast setting. I was acutely aware that while Alessandro knew intimate details of our lives, from Emma's nickname to my clothing sizes, I knew almost nothing about the man who now controlled our fate. Alessandra joined us, fussing over Emma's chocolate-smeared face and engaging her in conversation about the day ahead. With my daughter distracted, Alessandro moved closer to me, his voice low. We need to leave in an hour. Alessandro will watch Emma. I set down my fork. Leave? Where are we going? To meet Michael, he replied, his tone matter-of-fact. My stomach dropped. I'm not helping you ambush him. Alessandro's expression hardened slightly. This isn't about revenge, Olivia. It's about securing what he stole before it falls into the wrong hands. Then why do you need me there? Because, he said, his eyes never leaving mine, Michael doesn't know I've found you. His reaction when he sees you will tell me everything I need to know about his current alliances. You're using me as a test, I realized, anger rising in my chest. A human lie detector. I'm keeping you close because it's safer than leaving you here, he countered. If Michael has made deals with others, they could already be watching this building. Fear for Emma immediately overrode my indignation. Is she in danger here? Alessandro's hand covered mine on the countertop, his touch warm and firm. No one gets past my security. Alessandra will have 4 guards with her at all times. Emma will be perfectly safe. I glanced over at my daughter, who was now showing Alessandra how to make a proper bunny ear with a napkin. The thought of leaving her, even for a few hours, twisted my heart. I don't have a choice, do I? I asked quietly. Alessandro's thumb traced small circles on the back of my hand. There are always choices, Olivia, but only some lead to safety. I pulled my hand away, uncomfortable with how my skin tingled from his touch. Fine. I'll go with you. His eyes darkened with something that might have been approval. Good. Wear something from the closet. Something elegant but understated. We're meeting at Riverview. Riverview was one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city, the kind of place I'd passed by but never dreamed of entering. What exactly is your plan, beyond using me to gauge Michael's reaction? Get cleaned up, Alessandro said instead of answering. We'll discuss details in the car. I wanted to press him further, but was conscious of Emma's presence. Arguments could wait until we were alone. I finished my coffee and excused myself to shower and dress, dropping a kiss on Emma's sticky cheek. Be good for Alessandra, Ladybug. Mommy has to go out for a little while. Emma's lower lip jutted out slightly. You're leaving? Just for a little bit, I assured her. I'll be back before you know it, and you get to play with Alessandra. And Alex? She asked, looking at Alessandra with hopeful eyes. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, perhaps. Or maybe something softer. I have to go with your mom, Piccola, but I'll bring you back a surprise. This seemed to satisfy her, and she returned to her pancake artwork. As I headed back to the bedroom, I caught the expression on Alessandro's face as he watched my daughter, a mixture of tenderness and something that looked almost like longing. In the massive closet attached to my bedroom, I found an array of designer clothes that would have cost several months of my former salary. I selected a simple navy blue dress that seemed the most modest option, paired with low heels I could actually walk in. The woman who stared back from the mirror looked like a stranger, well-rested, dressed in clothes that fit perfectly, hair falling in soft waves around her shoulders. When I emerged from the bedroom, Alessandro was waiting in the hallway. He'd changed into a charcoal suit that fit his broad shoulders like it had been poured onto him. His eyes traveled over me slowly, appreciation evident in his gaze. "Beautiful," he murmured. I ignored the flutter in my stomach at his approval. "Let's get this over with." We said goodbye to Emma, who was thoroughly distracted by the prospect of baking cookies with Alessandra. Still, leaving her tore at something primal in me. I'd never been separated from her for more than my work shifts, and even then, I knew exactly where she was and who she was with. "She'll be fine," Alessandro said quietly as we rode the elevator down to the garage. Alessandra raised me from the age of 8. There's no one I trust more with children. The personal detail, the first he'd voluntarily shared, caught me by surprise. "What happened to your parents?" His jaw tightened. "My father died when I was 7. My mother couldn't handle the business or the grief, so Alessandra stepped in." The business. The way he said it made it clear he wasn't talking about a corner store or accounting firm. Before I could ask more questions, the elevator doors opened to reveal the same black SUV from yesterday, with Marco standing beside it. The drive to Riverview took us through the heart of the financial district, gleaming skyscrapers reflecting the morning sun. Alessandro sat beside me in the back seat, his presence filling the space between us even though we weren't touching. "Michael reached out through an intermediary," he explained, his voice low and controlled. "He claims to have the information secured in a location only he can access, and is willing to exchange it for $2 million and assurances of his safety." $2 million? I gasped. What kind of information is worth that much? Alessandro's eyes met mine. The kind that could dismantle certain aspects of my family's business and put many people in prison. "Including you?" I asked boldly. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Perhaps, though I've been careful to maintain distance from the more problematic ventures." "So you admit your family's business isn't entirely legitimate?" "I admit nothing," he replied smoothly. "I'm simply a businessman with diverse interests." I turned to look out the window, processing what he wasn't saying. The Russo family's criminal connections were an open secret in the city, but hearing Alessandro almost acknowledge them made the danger of our situation more real. "What happens after you get this information back?" I asked. "To Michael, I mean." Alessandro was silent for a long moment. "That depends on him. Are you going to kill him?" The question hung in the air between us, heavy with implications. He turned to face me fully. "Would that bother you, after everything he did to you and Emma?" I thought about the nights I'd spent crying, wondering how Michael could abandon his own daughter, how he could leave us drowning in debt without a backward glance. I remembered the birthdays he'd missed, the child support he'd never paid, the countless lies he'd told. "I don't want his death on my conscience," I finally said. Alessandro studied me intently. "Your loyalty to a man who showed you none is remarkable." "It's not loyalty," I clarified. "It's humanity, and it's for Emma's sake, not his. She deserves to know her father, even if he's a terrible one." Something shifted in Alessandro's expression. "Your daughter is fortunate to have a mother with such principles." The car pulled up to Riverview's discreet entrance, where a valet immediately opened Alessandro's door. Before stepping out, he turned to me once more. "When we're inside, you will act as though you are with me willingly," he instructed. "If Michael suspects you're under duress, it complicates matters." "You want me to pretend we're together? Like a couple?" The idea was absurd. "Precisely. His tone left no room for argument. Follow my lead, stay close, and say as little as possible. He exited the car and came around to my door, offering his hand with the polished manners of a gentleman. I took it reluctantly, feeling the strength in his fingers as they curled around mine. The restaurant's interior was all understated luxury: cream-colored walls, crystal chandeliers, tables spaced far enough apart to ensure privacy. The maitre d' greeted Alessandro by name, bowing slightly. "Mr. Russo, your usual table is ready. Your guest has not yet arrived." "Perfect, Antonio. Please send him directly to us when he does." Alessandro guided me through the restaurant with a hand at the small of my back, the light pressure both a direction and a claim. Heads turned subtly as we passed. Not the obvious staring of the cafe yesterday, but the discreet observation of people who recognized power when they saw it. Our table was in a secluded corner, with a view of both the entrance and the river beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. Alessandro pulled out my chair, then took the seat beside me rather than across, a position that allowed him to keep an arm draped casually across the back of my chair. "Relax," he murmured, his breath warm against my ear. "You look like you're facing a firing squad." I forced my shoulders to drop, trying to appear at ease. "This is all a bit surreal." His hand moved to the nape of my neck, fingers gently massaging the tension there. The intimate gesture sent shivers down my spine, and I had to fight the urge to lean into his touch. "Play your part, Olivia," he reminded me softly. "You're here because you want to be." A waiter approached with a bottle of champagne, pouring 2 glasses without being asked. Alessandro raised his glass to mine in a toast. "To new beginnings," he said, his blue eyes intense on mine. I took a sip of the champagne, the bubbles dancing on my tongue. "Is that what this is?" His response was cut short as his gaze shifted to someone over my shoulder. His arm tightened around me almost imperceptibly. "He's here," Alessandro said, his voice dropping to a dangerous register. "Remember what I said." I followed his gaze and saw him. Michael. He looked different than I remembered, thinner, with dark circles under his eyes and a nervous energy that made him seem like he might bolt at any moment. He scanned the restaurant, his eyes landing on our table. The moment he recognized me, his face went slack with shock. He froze mid-step, color draining from his features. "Perfect," Alessandro murmured. "That's genuine surprise. He didn't know I'd found you." Michael approached our table slowly, as if walking through quicksand. His eyes darted between Alessandro and me, confusion and fear battling for dominance in his expression. "Reeves," Alessandro greeted him, not bothering to stand. "You're looking... well." "What is she doing here?" Michael blurted out, staring at me. "Olivia, what the hell?" Before I could respond, Alessandro's hand slid from my neck to my shoulder, pulling me closer to his side. "Olivia is with me now," he said, his tone casual yet laced with warning. "A development you might have anticipated when you left her drowning in your debts." Michael's eyes widened as he processed Alessandro's possessive gesture, the implication in his words. "Liv, you can't be serious. This man is dangerous. So is abandoning your child," I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. 18 months of anger and hurt crystallized into cold clarity. "So is stealing and running away while leaving us to face the consequences." Alessandro's thumb stroked the bare skin of my shoulder, a gesture that might have appeared affectionate to observers, but felt like a reminder of our arrangement. "Sit down, Michael. We have business to discuss." Michael sank into the chair across from us, his eyes still fixed on me with disbelief. "How long has this been going on?" "That's not your concern," Alessandro replied before I could speak. "What concerns me is the return of my property. All of it." Michael swallowed hard. "I have it. Safe. But I need guarantees before I hand it over." "You're not in a position to negotiate," Alessandro said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You betrayed me, stole from me, and then had the audacity to try to sell my own information back to me." "You don't understand," Michael insisted, desperation creeping into his tone. "I didn't have a choice. They were going to kill me if I didn't get them what they wanted. Alessandro's expression didn't change, but I felt him tense beside me. "Who are they, Michael?" "The Vega family," Michael whispered, glancing nervously around the restaurant. "They approached me 6 months before I left. Said they knew things about me, about my gambling debts. Said they'd hurt Olivia and the baby if I didn't cooperate." I gasped softly. "You left because someone threatened us? Why didn't you tell me?" Michael couldn't meet my eyes. I was supposed to deliver the information to them, but I couldn't go through with it. "I ran instead. Figured they'd leave you alone if I wasn't in the picture." Alessandro's hand tightened on my shoulder. "Yet you kept the information, and now you're trying to sell it back to me rather than simply returning what you stole." "I need the money to disappear," Michael said, his voice cracking. "They found me 3 weeks ago. Said they'd still honor our original deal if I got them what they wanted. I've been stalling, trying to figure out another option." "So you decided to contact me," Alessandro concluded, "hoping I'd pay more than the Vegas." Michael nodded miserably. "I figured you'd want it back more than they want to use it against you." Alessandro was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. I could almost see the calculations running behind his eyes, assessing the truth in Michael's story, weighing options and outcomes. "Where's the information now?" he finally asked. "Storage unit, downtown. The key and access code are in a safety deposit box at First National, box 447. Alessandro nodded to someone across the room. One of his men, I realized, who had been watching us discreetly. The man immediately left, presumably to retrieve the items Michael had mentioned. "If what you say is true, and if the information is intact, your debt to me will be considered paid," Alessandro said, his tone measured and precise. "You will leave this city today and never return. You will make no attempt to contact Olivia or Emma again. Is that understood?" Michael's eyes widened. "But she's my daughter. A daughter you abandoned." Alessandro cut in, his voice like ice. "A daughter whose mother you left defenseless against the very people you claim to have been protecting her from." I watched Michael's face crumple with the weight of his actions. For 18 months I'd imagined this confrontation, rehearsed all the things I would say to him if I ever saw him again. But now, faced with his pathetic reality, I felt only emptiness where rage had once lived. "Is Emma okay?" he asked me quietly. "She's fine," I replied. "She barely remembers you." The truth seemed to hit him like a physical blow. He slumped in his chair, running a hand over his face. "I never meant for any of this to happen, Liv. You have to believe that." "What I believe doesn't matter anymore," I said. "What matters is what happens next." Alessandro's phone buzzed discreetly. He checked it, then nodded slightly. "My men have located the safety deposit box. We'll verify the contents of the storage unit within the hour." "Then we're done?" Michael asked hopefully. "Almost." Alessandro signaled the waiter, who brought over a folder and placed it in front of Michael. "Sign these papers first." Michael opened the folder cautiously. "What is this?" "Termination of your parental rights," Alessandro stated flatly. "Full custody to Olivia, with no visitation rights or future claims." My heart stuttered in my chest. I hadn't asked for this, hadn't even considered it as a possibility. "Alessandro," he squeezed my shoulder gently, silencing me. His eyes remained fixed on Michael. "Consider it the final payment of your debt." Michael stared at the papers, then at me. "Liv, you don't want this. I know I've been a terrible father, but you haven't been a father at all," Alessandro interrupted coldly. "Sign the papers and walk away with your life, or don't sign them and face the consequences of your theft. Your choice." The implied threat hung in the air between them. Michael's hand shook as he reached for the pen Alessandro offered. He hesitated, pen poised above the signature line. "Can I at least say goodbye to her?" he asked, his voice barely audible. For the first time since the conversation began, I felt a flicker of sympathy for the man I had once loved. "She's too young to understand, Michael. It would only confuse her." He nodded once, resignation etched into every line of his face. Then he signed each page where indicated, the scratch of pen against paper, the only sound at our table. When he finished, Alessandro took the folder and handed it to a server who appeared silently at his side. "My lawyer will file these immediately." Michael stood, looking lost and diminished. What do I do now? There's a ticket to Buenos Aires waiting for you at the airport, Alessandro informed him. A new identity. Enough money to start over. One of my men will escort you there directly from here. Michael looked at me one last time, regret and sorrow etched into his features. I'm sorry, Olivia, for everything. Tell Emma. Tell her something good about me someday. I couldn't bring myself to answer. Instead, I watched as he walked away, shoulders hunched with defeat, following one of Alessandro's men toward the exit. The father of my child, disappearing from our lives forever, this time by my tacit consent. When the door closed behind him, I felt Alessandro's gaze on me. Are you all right? The question seemed absurdly inadequate for the moment. I don't know, I answered honestly. I didn't expect any of this. He was lying about the Vegas, Alessandro said quietly, not entirely, but enough to matter. They did approach him, but much later than he claimed. His initial theft was his own idea, gambling debts to less patient creditors. I turned to face him. How can you be sure? Because the Vegas would have killed him the moment he failed to deliver, he replied matter-of-factly. The fact that he's still breathing proves he hadn't made a deal with them until recently. The casual way he discussed murder should have horrified me, but instead, I felt only a dull acceptance. This was Alessandro's world, a world of power plays and lethal consequences that I'd been unwittingly drawn into through Michael's actions. What happens now? I asked, suddenly feeling exhausted despite the early hour. Alessandro's hand moved to cup my cheek, his touch surprisingly gentle. Now we return home. Once my men confirm the information is secure, this particular danger will be neutralized. Home. The word caught me off guard. The luxurious apartment with its princess bed for Emma and clothes that fit me perfectly wasn't home. It was a beautiful cage. Yet the alternative, returning to our shabby apartment, to endless shifts and constant worry, held no appeal either. And us? I pressed, needing clarity. What exactly do you expect from me, Alessandro? What does your protection entail? His thumb traced my lower lip, the gesture intimate and possessive. Tonight, he promised, his voice dropping to a register that sent heat spiraling through me despite my confusion. Tonight I'll show you exactly what it means to be mine. The words should have frightened me, should have triggered indignation and resistance. Instead, I found myself leaning slightly into his touch, my body responding to him in ways my mind wasn't ready to acknowledge. As he guided me from the restaurant, his hand once again at the small of my back, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd crossed a threshold from which there was no return. Michael was gone, taking with him any last vestiges of my old life. Ahead lay something unknown, dangerous, but also perhaps filled with possibilities I'd never dared to imagine. The drive back to Alessandro's brownstone passed in tense silence. Questions swirled in my mind, but I couldn't find the words to ask them. Alessandro sat beside me, outwardly calm yet radiating a controlled energy that filled the space between us. My thoughts kept returning to Michael's final moments in the restaurant. His defeated posture, the trembling of his hand as he signed away his rights to Emma. Despite everything he'd done, a small part of me ached for what might have been. For the family we'd never become. He would have hurt her eventually. Alessandro said quietly, as if reading my thoughts. I turned to him, startled. What? Michael. His blue eyes met mine, piercing and direct. Men who run from responsibility don't suddenly embrace it. Men who betray once will betray again. Emma is better off without his influence. The blunt assessment cut through my sentimentality with surgical precision. You don't know that for certain. I know his type, Alessandro replied. I've seen it countless times in my business. Men who value their own skin above all else, who abandon principles at the first sign of pressure. And you're different? I couldn't keep the challenge from my voice. A man who threatens others, who forces custody papers on a father at what amounts to gunpoint? Something dangerous flickered across his face. I've never abandoned those under my protection. I've never broken a promise, and I've never turned my back on a child. The conviction in his voice gave me pause. For all his intimidating presence and dubious business connections, Alessandro had shown nothing but kindness to Emma. Even his high-handed actions with Michael had, in their way, been protective of her interests. "I'm trying to understand you," I admitted. "One moment you're threatening people, the next you're making bunny pancakes for a 3-year-old. A hint of a smile touched his lips. "Is it so hard to believe I can be both?" Before I could answer, Marco announced we had arrived. The garage door closed behind us with a finality that echoed my situation. Sealed away from my old life, enclosed in Alessandro's world. Emma's excited voice greeted us the moment the elevator doors opened to the apartment. She ran toward me, a streak of flour across her cheek, and a gap-toothed smile lighting up her face. "Mommy, Alex, we made cookies, real Italian cookies." I knelt to catch her in my arms, breathing in her sweet scent, now mingled with vanilla and sugar. "That sounds amazing, Ladybug. Did you save some for us?" "Of course." She wriggled free to look up at Alessandro. "Did you bring my surprise?" For a moment I panicked. In the drama with Michael, I'd forgotten Alessandro's promise to Emma. But he reached into his pocket and produced a small box wrapped in silver paper. "I never break a promise, Piccola," he said, kneeling down to her level. Emma tore into the package with 3-year-old enthusiasm, gasping with delight when she revealed a tiny music box. When she opened it, a delicate melody played as a ballerina twirled. "It's beautiful," she breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. "It belonged to my mother," Alessandro said quietly. "She would want a little princess to have it now." The personal significance of the gift struck me. This wasn't something he'd instructed an assistant to purchase. It was a family heirloom. I caught Alessandro's eye over Emma's head, silently questioning this gesture. He held my gaze steadily, something almost vulnerable in his expression. Then Emma launched herself into his arms for a hug, and I watched in amazement as the dangerous man who had orchestrated Michael's exile melted into the embrace, his large hand gently patting her back. "Come see our cookies," Emma demanded, pulling away and grabbing Alessandro's hand. He allowed himself to be led to the kitchen, glancing back at me with a raised eyebrow, an invitation to follow. In the kitchen, Alessandra was arranging star-shaped cookies on a cooling rack. She looked up as we entered, her eyes moving between Alessandro and me with quiet assessment. "Everything is resolved?" she asked in Italian, though the question needed no translation. Alessandro nodded once, all taken care of. The loaded exchange hung in the air, but Emma's excitement about her cookies quickly dispelled the tension. We spent the next hour in the kitchen, Emma proudly showing us her baking skills, while Alessandra shared stories of Alessandro as a child, tales of mischief and stubbornness that humanized him in a way I hadn't expected. He once tried to build a fort in the garden using his father's antique chess set as building blocks, Alessandra recounted, eyes twinkling. $30,000 worth of hand-carved ivory, arranged in the mud like toy blocks. Alessandro rolled his eyes, though a smile played at his lips. "I was 6, and you're exaggerating the value. Your father nearly had a stroke," she continued unfazed. "But he couldn't stay angry when he saw how proud you were of your creation." I tried to imagine Alessandro as a little boy, eager for his father's approval. It was easier than I would have thought, especially watching him now with Emma. Patient as she explained her own creative process with the cookie dough, attentive to her childish logic. After lunch, Emma began to yawn, the morning's excitement catching up with her. Alessandra offered to put her down for a nap, leaving Alessandro and me alone in the living room. "Your aunt is wonderful with her," I observed, settling onto the sofa. Alessandro nodded, pouring 2 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter. "Alessandra practically raised me after my mother's breakdown. She's the closest thing to a mother I've known since I was 8. He handed me one of the glasses and sat beside me, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from him, but not so close as to make me uncomfortable. "What happened to your mother?" I asked, surprised by his willingness to discuss his past. He took a sip of his drink before answering. "After my father was killed, she couldn't cope. Started with prescription medications, escalated to anything that would numb her grief. She lives in a private facility in Switzerland now. Has for the past 20 years. "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it. Despite everything, I couldn't help but feel compassion for the child who had lost both parents in such different ways. "It was a long time ago," he replied. though something in his tone suggested the wound wasn't as healed as he claimed. Weakness is a luxury my family can't afford. Grief isn't weakness, I countered gently. It's human. His eyes met mine, startlingly intense. Is that why you stayed single after Michael left? Grief? The question caught me off guard, partly. Mostly it was practical. Working 3 jobs and raising Emma didn't leave much time for dating. And now? He asked, his voice dropping lower. My heart rate accelerated. Now I'm essentially your prisoner in a gilded cage, not exactly conducive to a social life. Alessandro set his glass down and shifted closer, one arm stretching along the back of the sofa behind me. Is that how you see your situation? As my prisoner? What would you call it? I challenged, though my voice lacked the firmness I'd intended. You brought us here against my will. You orchestrated Michael's removal from our lives. You've made it clear we're not free to leave. I call it protection, he replied, his fingers gently touching my hair. Everything I've done has been to ensure your safety and Emma's future. At what cost, Alessandro? What do you really want from me? His hand moved to cup my cheek, turning my face toward his. I think you know. The intensity in his blue eyes made my breath catch. This close, I could see flecks of darker blue around his pupils, the slight shadow of stubble along his jaw, despite his morning shave, the perfect fullness of his lower lip. Why me? I whispered. You could have any woman you wanted. Something darkened in his gaze. I don't want any woman. I want one who understands loyalty, who would sacrifice everything for her child, who maintains her dignity despite circumstances that would break most people. His thumb traced my lower lip. I want you, Olivia. The raw honesty in his voice sent heat spiraling through me. I should have pulled away, should have reminded myself of how we'd come to this moment, through manipulation and coercion, however well-intentioned. Instead, I found myself leaning into his touch, my body responding to him in ways my mind wasn't ready to acknowledge. This is Stockholm Syndrome, I murmured, half to myself. Alessandro actually laughed, the sound rich and genuine. If that helps you rationalize your attraction to me, feel free to use it. His expression sobered, but we both know it's more than that. I saw you watching me with Emma. You're beginning to see who I really am. A criminal with a soft spot for children? I suggested, though without real heat. A man who values family above all else. He corrected. A man who can offer you and Emma everything you deserve. His hand slid to the nape of my neck, fingers tangling in my hair. Slowly, giving me time to pull away, he leaned closer until his breath mingled with mine. Tell me to stop, he whispered against my lips. I should have. Every rational thought screamed that this was madness. He had upended my life, threatened the father of my child, effectively taken me hostage. Yet in the span of just 2 days, he had also shown me kindness, respect, and genuine care for my daughter. The contradiction was maddening, intoxicating. Instead of pushing him away, I closed the final distance between us. His lips met mine with surprising gentleness, a contrast to the power I knew he possessed. The kiss was restrained, almost questioning, until I parted my lips on a sigh. Then something changed, broke loose, his control slipping as his hand tightened in my hair, his mouth becoming more demanding. I responded without conscious thought, my hands moving to his chest, feeling the solid strength beneath his shirt. Heat bloomed between us, the kiss deepening as his arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me closer. A distant part of my mind noted the irony. I was kissing the very man who had disrupted my entire existence. But that thought was drowned out by the sensation of his touch, the intoxicating scent of his cologne, the undeniable chemistry that had been simmering beneath our every interaction. When we finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Alessandro rested his forehead against mine. You see, he murmured, this was inevitable from the moment I saw you in that cafe. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. Alessandro's expression instantly shifted, the tender moment replaced by the calculating businessman. He checked the message, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. What is it? I asked, still trying to gather my scattered thoughts. My men recovered the information from the storage unit, he said, his voice now clipped and professional. But there's a complication. The Vegas have been watching the location. There was an altercation. Fear sliced through the lingering warmth of our kiss. Is everyone all right? My men are fine, he assured me, already standing. But this changes things. The Vegas will know by now that I've recovered the information, which means they'll be looking for alternative leverage. Understanding dawned with horrifying clarity. Michael. They'll go after Michael. Alessandro's expression hardened. Michael is no longer my concern. He's Emma's father, I insisted, rising to face him. Regardless of what he did, she has his blood. He signed away his rights, Alessandro reminded me coldly. He chose to run rather than face the consequences of his actions. Because he was afraid. You can't just leave him to die. Alessandro studied me for a long moment, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. Your capacity for forgiveness is remarkable, Olivia, but misplaced in this instance. It's not forgiveness, I clarified. It's humanity. The same humanity I tried to explain to you earlier today. He turned away, pacing to the window that overlooked the city. For several minutes he stood in silence, tension radiating from his broad shoulders. When he finally spoke, his voice was measured and precise. I'll have my men intercept Michael at the airport and bring him to a secure location until this is resolved. But understand this, I'm doing it for you and Emma. Not for him. Relief washed through me. Thank you. Alessandro turned back to face me, his expression grave. This complicates our security situation. Until I'm certain the Vegas aren't targeting you and Emma, we'll need to take additional precautions. What kind of precautions? For now, no one leaves this building without my direct approval and armed escort, he stated. I'm doubling the security detail and moving up our timetable. Timetable for what? Alessandro crossed the room to stand before me again, his presence overwhelming in its intensity. For making our arrangement permanent. I took an instinctive step backward. What does that mean? It means, he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous purr, that, by this time tomorrow, you will be my wife in the eyes of the law and my family. No one would dare touch what officially belongs to a Russo. The declaration hit me like a physical blow. Wife? You can't be serious. We barely know each other. We know what matters, he countered. I know you're a devoted mother who would do anything for her child. You know I have the means and the will to protect you both. The rest is details. Marriage isn't a security measure, Alessandro. It's a commitment. A partnership based on love and mutual respect. His expression softened slightly. Do you think I don't respect you, Olivia? Do you think what I feel for you and Emma is merely obligation? I don't know what you feel, I admitted. How could I? 2 days ago you were a stranger. Alessandro took my hands in his touch warm and firm. Then let me be clear. From the moment I discovered Michael's connection to you, I've had my men watching over you. For 18 months I've ensured your landlord didn't evict you despite late payments, that your manager at the diner kept his hands to himself after that first incident, that Emma's daycare always had an opening despite their waiting list. I stared at him, stunned by the revelation. You've been manipulating my life for 1.5 years? I've been protecting you, he corrected. Discreetly, from a distance, allowing you the dignity of appearing to manage on your own, while ensuring you had the support you needed. Why? I whispered, overwhelmed by the scope of his involvement in our lives. Why would you do all that? Something vulnerable flickered in his eyes, gone so quickly I might have imagined it. Because from the first report my men gave me about you, your strength, your dignity despite impossible circumstances, your devotion to your child, I knew you were extraordinary. And because Emma deserved better than to suffer for her father's mistakes, the sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. Yet the implications of what he was saying left me reeling. So, you've been, what? Grooming us to join your family? Alessandro's jaw tightened. I prefer to think of it as giving fate a nudge in the right direction. Fate, I repeated flatly. You call kidnapping and forced marriage fate? I call recognizing what belongs to me fate, he replied, his tone hardening. I call finding the woman who complements my strength, who challenges me despite her circumstances, who awakens something I thought long dead, fate. His words stirred something deep within me, a longing I'd buried beneath the daily struggle of survival, a yearning for connection that transcended my practical concerns. Yet the rational part of my mind couldn't ignore the power imbalance, the lack of true choice in our situation. "I can't marry a man I met 2 days ago," I said, trying to sound firm despite my conflicted emotions. "You can, and you will," Alessandro replied, though his tone was more gentle than commanding. "For Emma's safety, if nothing else. Once the Vegas are dealt with, if you wish to discuss alternative arrangements, I'll listen. But for now, this is non-negotiable." Before I could argue further, Emma's voice called from the hallway. "Mommy, I had a bad dream." Our heated discussion instantly paused as both of us turned toward my daughter. She stood in the doorway, hair tousled from her nap, clutching her teddy bear with one hand and rubbing her eyes with the other. I crossed the room to her, kneeling to pull her into my arms. "It's okay, Ladybug. Mommy's here. It was just a dream." She buried her face in my neck, her little body still trembling slightly. "There were bad men. They were trying to take me away from you." My blood ran cold at her words. I looked up to find Alessandro watching us, his expression grim. The coincidence was too pointed to ignore. Even in sleep, Emma had sensed the danger surrounding us. Alessandro approached slowly, kneeling beside us. "No one will take you from your mother, Piccola," he said, his voice gentle but resolute. "I promise you that." Emma peeked at him from the shelter of my embrace. "Pinky promise?" A smile touched his lips as he extended his little finger to hers. "Pinky promise, the strongest kind." She solemnly wrapped her tiny finger around his much larger one, completing the sacred ritual of childhood. "Okay." Ikai. The simple exchange crystallized something in my mind. Whatever Alessandro's methods, whatever his motivations, his commitment to protecting Emma was genuine. In a world where her own father had abandoned her, this powerful, dangerous man was offering her unwavering security. "Why don't you help Alessandra set the table for dinner?" I suggested to Emma, brushing her curls back from her forehead. "I need to talk to Alex for a few more minutes." She nodded, her nightmare already fading in the resilient way of children. After she scampered off toward the kitchen, I turned back to Alessandro, who had risen to his feet. "If, and it's a big if, I agree to this marriage, I need conditions," I said, meeting his gaze steadily. Interest flickered in his blue eyes. "I'm listening." "Emma comes first, always. Her safety, her happiness, her future." "Without question," he agreed immediately. "I want legal protection," I continued. "A prenuptial agreement that guarantees Emma and I will be provided for generously if the marriage ends for any reason." Alessandro raised an eyebrow. "Planning our divorce before the wedding, Olivia?" "Being practical," I corrected. "You've turned my life upside down in 2 days. Forgive me for wanting some insurance." He inclined his head in acknowledgement. "My lawyer will draw up whatever documents you require. What else?" I took a deep breath. "I want the truth about your business." "All of it. I won't blindly tie myself to a man whose activities might put my daughter in danger." This request made his expression harden. "Some things are better left unknown, Olivia, for your own protection." "That's not good enough," I insisted. "I can't protect Emma from what I don't understand. I need to know what I'm walking into." Alessandro was silent for a long moment, clearly weighing his options. Finally, he nodded once. "After dinner, once Emma is asleep, we'll talk in my study." It was a concession, if not a complete victory. "One more thing," I said. "This marriage may be starting as a security measure, but I won't be treated like property. I expect a partnership, Alessandro. Respect, honesty, consideration." Something softened in his gaze as he stepped closer, reaching up to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear. "Those I can promise without reservation. I've never wanted a trophy wife, Olivia. I want a woman strong enough to stand beside me, not behind me." The intensity of his words, the conviction in his voice, sent a shiver of anticipation through me despite my lingering doubts. This wasn't how I'd imagined finding love again, if love was even the right word for what was developing between us. Yet something undeniable was growing, a connection that transcended our unusual circumstances. "Dinner's ready," Emma called from the kitchen, breaking the charged moment between us. Alessandro offered his hand, a gesture that somehow represented more than just guiding me to the dining room. "Shall we?" After a moment's hesitation, I placed my hand in his, feeling his fingers curl protectively around mine. "Yes." As we walked toward the kitchen, where Emma was proudly showing Alessandra how she had arranged the napkins, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just agreed to far more than a marriage of convenience. For better or worse, I had aligned my fate with Alessandro Russo's, a man as dangerous as he was compelling, as ruthless as he was kind, and somewhere deep inside, beneath the rational concerns and practical fears, a part of me thrilled at the prospect of belonging to him as completely as he clearly intended to possess me. Dinner passed in a strange juxtaposition of domesticity and tension. Emma chatted happily about the cookies she'd baked with Alessandra, oblivious to the undercurrents between Alessandro and me. For his part, Alessandro engaged with my daughter warmly, answering her endless questions with surprising patience, while occasionally catching my eye with looks that sent heat coursing through me. Alessandra observed it all with knowing eyes, her gaze moving between us with quiet assessment. When Emma began to yawn despite her protest that she wasn't tired, Alessandra offered to give her a bath and read her a bedtime story. "Can I have bubbles?" Emma negotiated, already sliding from her chair. "Of course, Piccola," Alessandra agreed with a smile. "And perhaps a song too, if you're very good." Emma turned to me, her expression suddenly serious beyond her years. "Will you come kiss me goodnight, Mommy?" "Always," I promised, touching her cheek gently. "I'll be there as soon as you're tucked in." She nodded, then surprised us all by going to Alessandro and tugging on his sleeve. "Will you come too, Alex?" Something shifted in his expression, a softening around his eyes, a vulnerability I hadn't seen before. "If your mother agrees, I would be honored." Both sets of eyes turned to me. Emma's hopeful, Alessandro's carefully neutral despite the clear desire I could read beneath his controlled facade. This small moment felt weighted with significance, a threshold beyond which our lives would be irrevocably intertwined. "Of course," I said softly. "We'll both come say goodnight." Emma beamed, taking Alessandra's hand and skipping toward the bathroom, already planning which story she wanted to hear. As their voices faded down the hallway, a heavy silence settled between Alessandro and me. "You don't have to go through with this," he said unexpectedly. "The marriage. There are other ways I can protect you both." The concession surprised me. "You seemed pretty adamant about it earlier." He rose from the table, gathering our plates with casual domesticity that seemed at odds with his dangerous reputation. "I am. But I want you willing, Olivia. Not merely compliant." I followed him to the kitchen, watching as he loaded the dishwasher with practiced efficiency. "The distinction matters to you more than you might think." He turned to face me, leaning against the counter. "Contrary to what you might believe, I don't make a habit of forcing women into my bed or my life." The blunt statement sent heat rushing to my face. "I never said, you didn't have to." His eyes held mine, intense and searching. "I see the conflict in your eyes. The attraction warring with resentment over the circumstances that brought us together." His perception was unnerving. "You've effectively taken control of my life in the span of 2 days. Can you blame me for having reservations? Not at all." Alessandro moved closer, stopping just within arm's reach. "But consider this. The circumstances that brought us together were set in motion long before I entered that cafe. Michael's choices, the Vegas threats, your struggle to survive. I merely stepped in when staying in the shadows was no longer an option." "So you see yourself as what? My savior?" I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. A smile touched his lips, though it didn't reach his eyes. "No. If anything, you may prove to be mine." Before I could question the cryptic statement, he glanced at his watch. "Emma will be waiting. After she's asleep, meet me in my study. I promised you answers, and you'll have them." The next hour passed in a blur of normalcy that felt surreal against the backdrop of our situation. I sat on the edge of Emma's princess bed, as Alessandra read a story about a brave little knight, watching my daughter's eyelids grow heavy. Alessandro stood in the doorway, his powerful frame incongruous in the fairy tale setting of Emma's room. Yet his expression as he watched her drift toward sleep held such tenderness, it made my chest ache. When Emma was finally asleep, Teddy Bear clutched to her chest, and breath coming in soft, even puffs. I leaned down to kiss her forehead. "Sweet dreams, Ladybug," I whispered. As I straightened, Alessandro approached the bed, hesitating briefly before bending to place a gentle kiss on Emma's curls. "Sogni d'oro, piccola principessa," he murmured. "Sweet dreams, little princess." The moment felt sacred somehow, a glimpse of the man beneath the dangerous facade, a man capable of genuine affection, of gentleness despite his power. As we left the room together, his hand found the small of my back, guiding me with a touch that felt both protective and possessive. "She trusts you," I observed, as we moved down the hallway. "Emma doesn't usually warm to strangers so quickly. Children sense more than we give them credit for," Alessandro replied. "They recognize who will protect them, who means them harm." His study door stood partially open, warm light spilling into the hallway. Inside, the fire had been lit, casting dancing shadows across the leather and wood. A decanter of amber liquid sat on a small table between two chairs, glasses already poured. Alessandro gestured for me to sit, waiting until I was settled before taking the chair opposite mine. The firelight carved shadows into the planes of his face, highlighting the aristocratic angles of his cheekbones and jaw. "You wanted the truth about my business," he began without preamble. "Understand that what I tell you puts you at risk. Knowledge is a dangerous thing in my world." "I need to know what I'm bringing Emma into," I replied firmly. "No more half-truths or vague illusions." He nodded once, accepting my stance. "The Russo family has been involved in both legitimate and illegitimate businesses for 4 generations. My grandfather established our presence in this city during Prohibition, smuggling alcohol from Canada. My father expanded our interests to include construction, shipping, real estate, and entertainment venues." "And the illegal side?" I pressed. Alessandro's expression remained impassive. "Protection services, gambling operations, certain import-export activities that circumvent taxation. Until recently, a significant income from loan operations. Loan sharking," I translated bluntly. "If you prefer the crude terminology, yes." He took a sip of his drink. "When I took control after my father's death, I began transitioning our interests toward legitimate enterprises. The transition has not been smooth." I leaned forward. "Meaning?" "Meaning there are those within the family and our associates who resist the change," he explained. "They see tradition and easy money slipping away. The Vegas are among those who would prefer the old ways to continue, particularly the loan business, which is especially lucrative. So Michael stole information that would reveal your illegal operations," I concluded. "Blackmail material." Alessandro's eyes narrowed slightly. "Yes and no. What Michael took was evidence of both illegal activities and my efforts to dismantle them. In the wrong hands, it could destroy everything I've built and send several family members to prison. In the right hands, say, federal authorities who might be persuaded to offer immunity in exchange for information on other families, it could accelerate my plans to legitimize our businesses completely." The revelation stunned me. "You're trying to go legitimate, completely?" "I have been for years," he confirmed. "Slowly, methodically, converting assets, cutting ties with certain operations, establishing safeguards for those loyal to my family while isolating those who refuse to evolve." "Why?" I couldn't keep the question from escaping. "Why walk away from what must be incredibly profitable operations?" Alessandro was silent for a moment, staring into the fire. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower, touched with an emotion I couldn't quite identify. "My father was gunned down in front of me when I was 7 years old," he said. The words measured and precise despite their painful content. A business rival sent a message in the most brutal way possible. My mother turned to chemicals to numb her grief, effectively abandoning me to Alessandra's care. Before he died, my father made me promise to protect our family, to ensure the Russo name endured with honor. He looked up, meeting my eyes directly. "What honor is there in businesses that destroy lives? What legacy is worth the risk of leaving a child fatherless as I was? As Emma was, in a different way?" The raw honesty in his voice, the glimpse of the wounded child beneath the powerful man, touched something deep within me. So this transition you're making, it's personal. Everything in this life is personal, Olivia, he replied. Business, family, loyalty, love, they're all facets of the same whole. I want to build something that will last, something I can be proud to pass on, something that won't require armed guards and constant vigilance. And the Vegas? Where do they fit into this? Alessandro's expression hardened. Carlo Vega was my father's contemporary, his sometimes rival, sometimes ally. His son, Matteo, lacks his father's vision and restraint. He sees my shift toward legitimate business as weakness, an opportunity to seize territory and operations I've abandoned. And now he knows you have the information Michael stole, I said, piecing it together. Which makes us targets. Precisely. Alessandro set his glass aside and leaned forward, his gaze intense. Now you understand why I'm insistent on formalizing our relationship immediately. As my wife, you'll have the full protection of my family name, my resources, my influence. The Vegas would think twice about targeting you directly. The logic was sound, if ruthlessly pragmatic. Yet questions still nagged at me. Why me, Alessandro? Of all the women you could have chosen, women from your world who understand its dangers and demands, why a struggling single mother with nothing to offer but debt and complications? Something shifted in his expression, a vulnerability that seemed at odds with his powerful presence. Because from the moment my men first reported on you, your unwavering dedication to your daughter despite impossible circumstances, your dignity in the face of hardship, your refusal to be broken by Michael's betrayal, I recognized something rare, something I've spent my life searching for without realizing it. He rose from his chair and moved to kneel before me, taking my hands in his. The position, this powerful man on his knees, sent a shock through me. In my world, Olivia, strength is everything. Not just the obvious power of wealth or violence, but the deeper strength of character. The kind that sustains when everything else fails. His thumbs traced circles on my palms. You have that strength in abundance. You are what the Russo family needs, what I need to complete the transformation I've begun. The intensity in his blue eyes, the raw honesty in his voice, made my heart race. You make it sound like I'm some kind of redemption. Perhaps you are, he acknowledged. For me, for Emma, for the future I'm trying to build, the question is whether you're willing to accept that role, with all its complications and rewards. I studied him, this dangerous, compelling man who had upended my life in mere days, who had shown kindness to my daughter, who was trying against all odds to break a cycle of violence and illegality that had claimed his father and destroyed his mother, who looked at me now with naked vulnerability, despite all his power. If I say yes, I said slowly, it would be a real marriage, not just on paper. I won't live a lie, especially in front of Emma. I would expect nothing less, he replied, his voice deepening. I want all of you, Olivia, your mind, your strength, your body, your future. I don't do things halfway. Heat bloomed in my core at his words, at the possessive glint in his eyes. And what do I get in return, besides security and financial stability? Alessandro's hand released mine to cup my cheek. My loyalty, my protection, my body, my name and all that comes with it, and in time, perhaps, my heart. Though I warn you, it's been unused for many years and may require your patient attention to function properly. The hint of self-deprecating humor surprised a laugh from me. At least you're honest about your emotional limitations. I will always be honest with you, he promised, his expression growing serious again. Even when the truth is difficult, that's my first vow to you, before any ceremony. The sincerity in his voice, the unwavering intensity of his gaze, broke down the last of my resistance. Whatever had begun between us, this strange, powerful connection that defied conventional timing and circumstances, felt inevitable now, a current too strong to fight. Yes, I said softly, I'll marry you, Alessandro. Not just for protection or security, but because I want to see who we might become together. Relief and triumph flashed across his features before he leaned forward, claiming my lips in a kiss that started gentle but quickly blazed into something more demanding. His hands framed my face, holding me as though I were something infinitely precious, yet completely his. I responded with equal fervor, my fingers threading through his dark hair, pulling him closer. All the tension and uncertainty of the past 2 days transformed into a different kind of energy, hot, electric, consuming. Alessandro broke the kiss only to trail his lips along my jaw to my ear. "Mine," he whispered, the word sending shivers down my spine. Finally. "Not yet," I murmured, though I tilted my head to give him better access to my neck. "Not officially." He chuckled against my skin, the vibration sending sparks of pleasure through me. "Technicalities. Your heart has already decided, as has mine." Before I could respond, a sharp knock at the study door interrupted us. Alessandro pulled back, irritation flashing across his features. "Enter," he called, his voice remarkably composed despite our intimate position. Marco opened the door, his expression grave. "Sorry to interrupt, boss, but we have a situation. The Vegas made a move. They tried to intercept Reeves at the airport." Alessandro was on his feet instantly, all traces of the tender lover replaced by the calculating businessman. "And?" "Our men got to him first. He's secure at the safe house on Willow Street." Marco hesitated. "But there's more. We have intelligence that the Vegas are planning to move against this location tonight." Fear sliced through the lingering warmth of our embrace. "Emma," I gasped, already rising. "She's safe," Alessandro assured me, his hand at the small of my back steadying and possessive. "This building is a fortress, but we need to accelerate our plans." He turned to Marco. "Arrange for Father Antonio to come immediately, and contact Judge Kendrick. I'll need those papers processed tonight." Marco nodded once and disappeared, closing the door behind him. "Father Antonio?" I questioned. "A priest?" Alessandro's eyes met mine, determination etched into every line of his face. "I won't wait until tomorrow to make you my wife. Not with the Vegas making their move. Tonight we end any question of your status and protection. The speed of events left me dizzy. But what about my conditions? The prenup? The legal protections for Emma?" "Already prepared," he replied, surprising me. "My lawyers had everything drawn up this afternoon, anticipating your concerns. The documents await your review and signature." Of course they did. Alessandro had been several steps ahead of me from the beginning. And Emma? She's too young to understand what's happening. "Children understand more than we credit them," Alessandro said, his tone gentling. "She already sees me as a protector, a figure of safety in her life. The rest will come with time." He was right, I realized. In the space of 2 days, Emma had already formed an attachment to Alessandro that went beyond her usual wariness of strangers. She sought his approval, delighted in his attention, trusted his presence. The foundation was already there. "This is happening so fast," I murmured, more to myself than to him. Alessandro's hand came to rest at the nape of my neck, a touch both comforting and possessive. "Some decisions shape a lifetime in an instant, Olivia. Meeting you was one. Claiming you as mine is another. I don't need time to know what I want, only the courage to seize it when it appears." The intensity of his conviction swept away my remaining doubts. Whatever force had brought us together, fate, circumstance, or Alessandro's careful manipulation, had created something real between us, something that transcended our unusual beginnings. "Then let's not waste any more time," I said, making my decision. "I'll review the papers, and then we'll do this. Become husband and wife, create a family for Emma, face whatever comes together." Approval, and something deeper flashed in Alessandro's eyes. He bent to kiss me once more, this time with a tenderness that belied his dangerous reputation. "There's a dress in your closet," he murmured against my lips. "Cream-colored silk. I had it delivered this afternoon, hoping you would agree." Of course he had. Even in this, Alessandro had anticipated my decision, planned for the outcome he desired. Instead of feeling manipulated, I found myself smiling at his confidence, his absolute certainty in what existed between us. "Presumptuous," I teased softly. "Optimistic," he corrected. brushing a strand of hair from my face. "Go to Emma. Stay with her until Alessandra comes for you. I need to make some calls, ensure everything is in place." I nodded, reluctantly breaking away from his touch. At the study door I paused, looking back at him. In the firelight, he seemed both dangerous and beautiful, power and vulnerability coexisting in perfect balance. "Alessandro," I said softly, "I'm trusting you with everything that matters to me. My daughter, my future, my heart. Don't make me regret it." His expression softened into something almost tender. "On my life, Olivia, you will never regret choosing me." The next hours passed in a blur of activity. I checked on Emma, still sleeping peacefully in her princess bed, unaware that her world was transforming around her. Alessandra helped me into the dress Alessandro had chosen, a simple sheath of ivory silk that fit as though it had been made for me, which it probably had been. My hair was arranged in loose waves, a single cream-colored rose tucked behind my ear. "You look beautiful," Alessandra said, adjusting the delicate gold bracelet she'd insisted I wear. It was my mother's, Alessandro's grandmother, a family tradition for Russo brides. The weight of history, of family legacy, settled around me along with the antique jewelry. "This isn't how I imagined getting married," I admitted. Alessandra's eyes crinkled with understanding. "Few things in life happen as we imagine them. It's how we adapt to the unexpected that defines us." She squeezed my hand. "My nephew has waited a long time to find someone worthy of his heart. He may not say the words easily, but his actions speak clearly." Before I could respond, a soft knock at the door announced Marco. "It's time," he said simply. The small ceremony took place in the living room, transformed by dozens of cream-colored roses and softly glowing candles. Father Antonio, a distinguished older man who clearly knew Alessandra well, stood before the fireplace. Judge Kendrick, a stern-faced woman with kind eyes, waited nearby with legal documents already bearing Alessandro's bold signature. Alessandro himself stood waiting for me, magnificent in a black suit that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders and the lean strength of his body. When our eyes met across the room, everything else faded away. The unusual circumstances, the danger lurking outside, the whirlwind speed of events. All that remained was the connection between us, powerful and undeniable. I moved toward him slowly, aware of Alessandra following behind me, of Marco standing guard by the door, of the priest watching with quiet assessment. But my focus remained on Alessandro, on the intensity in his blue eyes as they tracked my approach. When I reached him, he took my hands in his touch warm and steady. "You're breathtaking," he murmured, his voice pitched for my ears alone. "You clean up pretty well yourself," I replied, earning a flash of genuine smile that transformed his serious features. Father Antonio began the ceremony, abbreviated but still containing the essential vows and blessings. As Alessandro repeated the traditional promises, his voice resonated with conviction, his eyes never leaving mine. When my turn came, I was surprised by the steadiness in my own voice, the certainty I felt despite the extraordinary circumstances. "With this ring I thee wed," Alessandro said, sliding a platinum band set with diamonds onto my finger. I hadn't expected a ring, hadn't even thought about such details amidst the whirlwind of events. Yet Alessandro had, another indication of his meticulous planning, his attention to every aspect of claiming me as his. When Father Antonio pronounced us husband and wife, Alessandro drew me into his arms for a kiss that managed to be both appropriate for our small audience and promising of much more to come. His hand at the small of my back pressed me against him briefly, a subtle reminder of the passion simmering beneath the formal occasion. Judge Kendrick stepped forward next, presenting the legal documents for my signature. I scanned them quickly, recognizing the generous provisions for both Emma and me in case of Alessandro's death or divorce. My new husband had been true to his word. The papers protected us completely while still binding us to him in ways that extended beyond mere law. "With these signatures, you are now legally Mrs. Russo," Judge Kendrick announced after witnessing our signatures. "All the provisions take effect immediately, including the adoption papers for Emma." I looked up sharply at that. "Adoption papers?" Alessandro's hand covered mine, warm and reassuring. Legal adoption gives her my name, my protection, my inheritance rights. It changes nothing about your role as her mother, only adds my legal commitment to her future. His eyes searched mine. Is that acceptable? The thoughtfulness behind the gesture, ensuring Emma's place in his family was as secure as my own, touched me deeply. Yes, I whispered. That's more than acceptable. After the judge and priest departed, Alessandra brought out champagne and a small cake she had somehow prepared without my knowledge. We toasted our union in the strange, intimate gathering that felt both surreal and perfectly right. To family, Alessandro said, his glass raised. To new beginnings and stronger foundations. To family, I echoed, the word taking on new meaning in this context. No longer just Emma and me against the world, but a larger, more powerful unit bound by choice and commitment. As we sipped champagne, Marco approached Alessandro, murmuring something in his ear. Alessandro's expression hardened momentarily before he nodded once, dismissing his lieutenant with a gesture. What is it? I asked, once Marco had stepped away. The Vegas have backed down, Alessandro replied, at least for now. It seems news of our marriage has already spread through certain channels. They're reassessing their position. Relief washed through me. So Emma is safe? Emma has always been safe, he assured me, setting down his glass to take my hands in his. But now the world knows why. She is a Russo, as are you. My wife. My family. The possessive note in his voice, rather than offending me, sent a thrill of heat through my body. This powerful, dangerous man was now bound to me through law and vow, his protection and passion focused on Emma and me with laser precision. Alessandra discreetly excused herself, mentioning something about checking on Emma, leaving Alessandro and me alone in the candlelit room. The moment she departed, something shifted in the atmosphere. The formal ceremony giving way to the reality of our new relationship. Alessandro moved closer, one hand coming up to cup my cheek. Wife, he said softly, testing the word. Mine. Husband, I countered, surprising myself with how right the word felt. Mine. His eyes darkened at my reciprocal claim. Do you mean that, Olivia? Do you claim me as yours, despite everything? The vulnerability beneath the question touched me. This man, for all his power and control, needed reassurance as much as anyone. Perhaps more so, given his history of loss. Yes, I said simply. Whatever brought us together, fate, circumstance, your machinations, doesn't matter now. What matters is what we choose going forward. And I choose you, Alessandro, as my husband, as Emma's father, as my future. Something broke open in his expression, a wall crumbling to reveal raw emotion beneath. He pulled me against him, his lips finding mine in a kiss that contained none of the restraint of our earlier exchanges. This was possession, claiming, the full force of his desire unleashed now that the formalities were complete. I responded with equal fervor, my arms winding around his neck, my body melting into his. The silk of my wedding dress whispered between us, a barrier soon to be removed. His hands traced the curve of my spine, pressing me closer until I could feel every hard plane of his body against mine. I've wanted you from the first moment I saw you, he murmured against my neck, his breath hot against my skin. Sitting in that cafe, exhausted but still holding yourself with such dignity, I knew then that you would be mine. His confidence should have irritated me, but instead it sent heat pooling low in my belly. Even then you were planning this? Our marriage? Alessandro pulled back slightly, his eyes meeting mine with startling honesty. I was planning to protect you, to provide for you, to remove Michael's shadow from your life. The rest... His thumb traced my lower lip. The rest I hoped for, but didn't dare assume. The admission of uncertainty from this seemingly invincible man touched something deep within me. I raised my hand to his face, tracing the strong line of his jaw, the slight stubble emerging despite his earlier smooth shave. Take me to bed, Alessandro, I whispered. Make me yours completely. His pupils dilated at my words, desire darkening his blue eyes to midnight. Without warning, he swept me into his arms, cradling me against his chest as though I weighed nothing. "As my wife commands," he murmured, carrying me from the living room toward the master suite I hadn't yet seen. The bedroom, when we entered it, was a study in masculine elegance, deep blues and grays, rich wood, and subtle lighting that cast intimate shadows across the massive bed dominating the space. Alessandro set me gently on my feet beside it, his hands moving to the zipper of my dress with surprising delicacy for such powerful fingers. "I've imagined this," he confessed, his voice dropping to a register that sent shivers down my spine. "Undressing you slowly, discovering every inch of your body, claiming you as mine in the most primal way." The silk slipped from my shoulders, pooling at my feet in a whisper of fabric. I stood before him in only the delicate undergarments Alessandra had provided, cream-colored lace that left little to the imagination. Alessandro's eyes traveled over me slowly, appreciation and hunger evident in his gaze. "Beautiful," he breathed. "Even more perfect than I imagined." I should have felt self-conscious. My body bore the marks of pregnancy and motherhood, was softer in places than it had once been. But the raw desire in Alessandro's eyes banished any insecurity, replacing it with a heady sense of power. "Your turn," I said, reaching for the buttons of his shirt. He remained perfectly still as I undressed him, revealing the sculpted torso beneath his formal clothes. Scars marked his skin in places, evidence of a dangerous life lived on the edge, but they only enhanced his masculine beauty. I traced one that curved along his ribs, silently questioning. "Knife," he explained simply. "Business disagreement, years ago." I leaned forward to press my lips to the mark, a gesture of acceptance that made his breath catch audibly. Emboldened, I continued my exploration, undoing his belt, pushing his trousers down his powerful legs until he stood before me in only black boxer briefs that did nothing to hide his substantial arousal. When we were equally undressed, Alessandro pulled me against him, skin to skin, the contact sending electricity coursing through my body. His mouth found mine again, the kiss deeper, more demanding, as his hands roamed my back, my hips, learning the curves of my body with meticulous attention. "Tell me what you like," he murmured against my throat. "I want to please you, wife." The consideration in the midst of such passion touched me deeply. "Just touch me," I whispered. "I've been alone so long, Alessandro. Make me feel connected again." Understanding flashed in his eyes, comprehension of the deeper loneliness that had marked my life since Michael's betrayal, the isolation of single motherhood, the yearning for touch that went beyond the physical. "Never alone again," he promised, lifting me onto the bed with easy strength. Never. What followed was a discovery of each other's bodies, a mapping of pleasure points and sensitive places, an exchange of vulnerabilities transformed into strengths through shared intimacy. Alessandro touched me with reverence and hunger in equal measure, his skilled hands and mouth drawing responses from my body I hadn't known were possible. When he finally joined his body with mine, the physical connection mirrored something deeper forming between us, a bond transcending the circumstances of our meeting, the unusual speed of our relationship, the pragmatic reasons for our marriage. "Mine," he growled against my neck as we moved together, the word both question and declaration. "Yours," I gasped in response, my hands clutching his powerful shoulders. "And you're mine, Alessandro. Mine." The reciprocal claim seemed to inflame him further. His movements intensified, driving us both toward completion with single-minded focus. When release finally claimed me, it was with his name on my lips. Not the formal Alessandro, but the more intimate Alex, the name Emma had given him, the name that represented the man beneath the dangerous facade. He followed moments later, my name a prayer on his lips as his powerful body shuddered against mine. In the aftermath, he gathered me close, my head resting on his chest, where I could hear the strong, steady beat of his heart gradually slowing to normal. "I never expected you," he said after a long, comfortable silence, his fingers tracing patterns on my bare shoulder. "In all my planning, all my calculations for the future, I never accounted for someone like you entering my life." I tilted my head to look up at him. "Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" A smile touched his lips, a genuine one that transformed his serious features into something boyish and unguarded. "The best thing," You've upended all my careful plans in the most magnificent way," says the man who orchestrated our entire meeting and marriage in the span of 2 days. I teased gently. His arm tightened around me. I may have accelerated the timeline, but the connection between us, that was beyond even my control. He was right, I realized. Whatever had drawn us together, fate, circumstance, or Alessandro's machinations, had created something real between us, something that transcended our unusual beginnings. In the space of 2 days, this dangerous, compelling man had become essential to me in ways I was only beginning to understand. "What happens tomorrow?" I asked, settling more comfortably against him. "With the Vegas, with Michael, with everything." Alessandro's hand stroked my hair, the gesture soothing and possessive. "Tomorrow we begin our life together. I'll deal with the Vegas, permanently this time. Michael will be given his new identity and escorted out of the country. And you," he tilted my chin up to meet his gaze, "you will start getting used to being Mrs. Russo, with all the privileges and responsibilities that entails. And Emma?" His expression softened at the mention of my daughter. "Emma will have everything she deserves: security, education, opportunities, and a father who will never abandon her." The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. Whatever else Alessandro Russo might be, dangerous businessman, powerful crime figure transitioning toward legitimacy, ruthless protector, he was now irrevocably committed to Emma's well-being. "She already loves you, you know," I said softly. "Children have amazing instincts about who will protect them." "She's extraordinary," Alessandro agreed. "Like her mother." He shifted to hover above me, his blue eyes intense in the dim light. "I don't say these words easily, Olivia. They've rarely passed my lips since my father's death. But I need you to hear them now, to understand what you've awakened in me." My heart raced as I waited, sensing the significance of the moment. "I love you," he said simply, the words carrying the weight of absolute truth. "I think I began loving you from the first reports about your strength, your dignity, your devotion to Emma. And now that you're mine, truly, legally, physically mine, I find that love has only deepened." Tears pricked at my eyes, unexpected emotion welling up from somewhere deep within. This dangerous man, this complex mixture of ruthlessness and tenderness, had offered me not just protection and security, but his heart, a gift I suspected few had ever received. "I'm falling in love with you too," I admitted, the truth of it surprising even me. "It's too fast, too soon by any rational measure, but the heart follows its own timeline," he finished, bending to brush his lips against mine. "And now we have a lifetime to let that love grow stronger." As he claimed my mouth again, as our bodies began the dance of desire once more, I embraced the extraordinary truth of our situation. In the span of just 2 days, I had gone from struggling single mother to the wife of one of the most powerful men in the city, from fearing Alessandro Russo to giving myself to him completely, from isolation to belonging. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, adjusting to life as a Russo, navigating the complexities of Alessandro's world, building a genuine family for Emma. But tonight, in the circle of my new husband's arms, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: absolute security, bone-deep contentment, and the exhilarating certainty that I was exactly where I belonged. "Look at me," Alessandro whispered, as our bodies joined once more, his blue eyes holding mine with hypnotic intensity. "You're not alone anymore, Olivia. Never again." In that promise, in the fierce protection and passion of his embrace, I found the home I'd been searching for all along, not in a place, but in a person, in Alessandro, in us. And I knew with absolute certainty that whatever had brought us together, fate, circumstance, or something more mysterious, had given me exactly what I needed. A man strong enough to protect us, gentle enough to love us, and determined enough to never let